I used to think the humans were monsters. I was trained to believe it. From our earliest drills, we were shown their worlds through filtered broadcasts and hollow summaries. Violent, ruthless, territorial, that was the mantra. Over and over until it became a fact more than an opinion. My name is Kraylen Var, First Commander of the Yervani Third Fleet. We come from a system far from the core worlds of the Galactic Council, and yet we have long held influence due to our precision and unity. I have lived my life under stars that humans never knew existed. The war started with trade, doesn't it always? The humans expanded aggressively into sectors previously deemed unviable by most races. When their terraforming technology made barren moons bloom, the Council took notice. With new colonies came new trade routes, and those routes carved directly through Yervani and Draylak territory. At first, there were diplomatic missions, councils convened under the holographic domes of Aurith Prime. The humans argued that the corridors were within neutral zones, and their navigational AI ensured no trespassing of sovereign space. But Yervani and Draylak leaders saw it as encroachment, a quiet invasion. Trade guilds from the Draylak Consortium lobbied to cut off supplies to human colonies. The Yervani Senate voted in favor of economic sanctions. The humans responded by establishing their own commerce hubs, redirecting major routes. These actions were interpreted as direct defiance of Council accords. Skirmishes began along the outer ring, merchant vessels attacked, outposts sabotaged. Still, the Council refused to call it a war. That changed when Draylak cruisers launched an unprovoked orbital bombardment on Valis Prime, a human colony with no military presence. 9 million lives gone in 3 rotations, civilians, families. The humans did not retaliate immediately. That unnerved us more than any weapon could have. It meant they were preparing something worse. I stood on the bridge of my cruiser, the Vorn Claw, orbiting a lifeless world where a human outpost once stood. Fires still smoldered in the oxygen-rich patches. The planet, Chiron Delta, had been used for medical research and agriculture. It was not supposed to be a target. My orders were to ensure no survivors remained. No signs of life, my second reported. But I hesitated. Something lingered in the atmosphere, not a threat, but an unease, as if the land itself mourned. Scan again. They obeyed, and we found her. A child, barely functional vitals, but alive, curled inside a broken environmental pod. Human, blonde hair matted with soot. "Orders, Commander," asked my second. My mandibles tightened. This was not a soldier, not a threat. Bring her aboard. I did not understand the decision then. I only felt that letting her die would be one more irredeemable step. As the war escalated, I kept her hidden, fed her, watched her laugh at our food rations. She called herself Lena. She asked if I was a monster. "I don't know," I told her. We drifted between battles and reports. The Council became increasingly fractured. Some species called for sanctions against the aggressors. Others secretly supplied weapons to both sides. Yervani High Command issued stricter protocols. Any officer found sympathizing with humans faced exile or death. But I continued to hide Lena, even as our ships laid waste to more human settlements. The humans, they were resolute. Entire fleets sacrificed themselves to hold trade corridors, civilian ships converted to mobile medbays, colonists evacuated under fire. Their resistance was born not from retaliation, but from a collective will to protect. I watched recordings, acts of courage, parents shielding children, soldiers holding ground against impossible odds to buy time for evacuations. I intercepted distress calls where human officers told jokes to calm the dying. They did not act like the monsters I was told about. And I began to doubt. Then came Orion, a strategic system rich in raw resources and situated at the crossroads of major trade routes. Control of Orion would decide the war. Three factions converged: the Yervani fleets, the Draylak war engines, and the last human coalition. We led the charge. I was to command the orbital assault. Human vessels met us like fire meeting steel. I saw the Aegis Dawn, their flagship, take 5 torpedoes and still hold formation. The crew fought as though they were defending Earth itself, not some distant mining world. The battle raged for 7 cycles. We lost a third of our fleet. Human losses were even worse, yet they refused to fall. And in that storm of chaos, I made my choice. I broadcasted a ceasefire command from the Vorn Claw. Ignored. I amplified it. Still ignored. So I moved my ship. Directly between the Draylak cruisers and the human fleet, my officers panicked, threatened mutiny. But I stood firm, and I broadcasted one final message on all channels. This war ends now. Weapons locked onto us from both sides, but neither fired. The silence that followed was heavier than any bombardment. Minutes passed, then hours, and slowly ships began to power down. First ours, then the humans, then, reluctantly, the Draylak. The council convened that same rotation, under pressure from my actions and media broadcasts leaking footage of massacres on civilian colonies. Peace negotiations resumed. I was summoned. Not as a commander, but as a witness. They wanted testimony on what I had seen, on the child, on the truth. I stood in the assembly hall before leaders of 1,000 systems. Some wore ceremonial masks, others communicated through lights and scent. It was the first time I saw so many worlds represented in one room. What changed your view of humanity, Commander Var? I glanced at Lena, asleep in my arms. They bleed for each other, I said, not for conquest, but for care, for survival, for hope. I used to think that was weakness. Now I see it is their strength. Silence. Then a voice. And do you still believe they are monsters? I shook my head. No. We are. The treaty was signed a week later. The Draylak Consortium was forced to disband its private armies. The Yervani Senate issued a formal apology and agreed to reparations. I returned to my people, not as a soldier, but a messenger. The humans did not demand retribution, only cooperation. A mutual protection pact was drafted and signed. Shared research stations were built. I watched Lena run through the halls of our ship, laughing. She was no longer just a reminder of our sins. She was a bridge. We had invaded them. They forgave us. And I, who once burned their colonies, now carry their hope.